2020 and the spread of the worst pandemic in 100 years has turned our world upside down and has pushed the entire human race to think differently about how we operate, especially religious communities around the world, including Jewish communities in North America. As Jewish organizations are pivoting in response to COVID-19 and the implications that come with it, especially social distancing going on right now, leaders must show humility, create a team of diverse experts that they can have internal debates with one another, but are a united front when they present their final decision to the community. Although this model can work for secular organizations as well, it is even more critical for Jewish organizations to follow this model, as many institutions have been built on the rabbi or the executive director making the final decision. Now is the time to reform that model of leadership and create a model that will allow organizations to navigate these unprecedented times. Judaism, as many know it, is built around the community and spaces for gathering. In the 21st century, our world has become even more virtual as the internet and apps and phones and computers are now part of our everyday life. But for many Jewish people, even as technology has become part of our daily routine, their time with their Jewish community is their opportunity to unplug. For many, at a synagogue, that's where they're embraced by a community with loved ones that hug them, give them handshakes, and eat together. The current pandemic has changed all of that. When COVID-19 spread across North America in March 2020, most things that define the 21st century Judaism went online. During Passover, most families held a small Seder just for those in their quarantine bubble. But at that time, many, including myself, thought we were nearing the end of quarantining and social distancing. Shortly after Passover, Jewish overnight summer camps across the country announced that they would not hold any in-person programs for the summer of 2020. As sad as it was to lose out on the experience that young Jewish children would have had this summer, it was the safest decision to protect the children, staff, and the future of American Jewish camping. I was working as an assistant director at one of the largest Jewish overnight camps, Osiri. The decision to cancel camp this summer was made by a team of experts, and when the decision was shared with the community, the entire leadership team stood by those who made the tough but necessary decision. Parents and community members respected this decision and modeled the united front they saw from the leadership team. As the Jewish community is now getting prepared for the start of a new school year, high holidays, and for many congregations, the moment when families decide if they want to renew their synagogue membership, the end of the pandemic is nowhere in sight. The next year is going to be a historical moment in American Jewish history as we see which institutions survive and adapt to new way of life and which sadly crumble. This will be the ultimate test of leadership in organizations. Will they lead their people and stay united during the crisis, or will they be left behind as the world changes? As decisions are being made now during the pandemic that may have lasting implications on an organization for decades, it is essential that leaders surround themselves with a team of professionals that make up a diverse background of perspectives. For example, a congregation in the Chicago area has a COVID-19 task force that has a social worker, a doctor, a public health specialist, a lawyer, a teacher, all as members of their task force working with the clergy. These key specialists are invested in the survival of their community and are important thought partners for the leader of the community to consult with. For leaders to lead their organization during this pandemic and allow them to continue to thrive in the 21st century, they must have humility. In Genesis chapter 41, Joseph has saved Egypt from a famine by telling Pharaoh of his dream that there will be 7 years of abundance and then 7 years of famine. During the famine, Joseph's family comes to him in dire need of food. Joseph forgives his family and saves them during the famine. Joseph was able to let go of the past and focus on saving his family. He was able to practice humility and see the larger picture, survival during the crisis. So too must Jewish organizations put aside their disagreements and work together for two goals: saving lives now during the pandemic and ensuring that there is a strong Jewish community after the pandemic. As Professor Hal Lewis explained, humility is not a leadership tactic. It's not what a leader does, it's what a leader is. Humility is a sign of strength and shows confidence in your leadership. Only the humble leaders are open to being ignorant, and from ignorance comes the ability to ask hard questions and challenge long-held assumptions. We are living in a time when Jewish organizations must be asking the tough questions and challenging the status quo for the Jewish community has operated in the past. As the Jewish community in the world is entering a new era, so too must our leaders show humility as we explore these uncharted waters. In the book Good to Great and Social Sectors, author Jim Collins explains 5 levels of leadership, the 5th being the highest. To achieve level 5 leadership, no individual leader, not even the nominal chief executive, has enough structural power to make the most important decisions by himself or herself. Collins argues that a nonprofit leader must reject the single leader model. No leader can do it all alone. They must value building a diverse team. We are better leaders when it means putting different perspectives around the table. In the article In Praise of the Incomplete Leader by Deborah Ancona, Thomas W. Malone, Wanda J. Orlowski, and Peter Senge, they argue that the idea that there is a perfect leader that knows everything is a myth. A leader does not know everything, also known as the incomplete leader, does not mean that they are incomplete. These are successful leaders that can recognize their strengths and weaknesses. They are leaders that surround themselves with others who complement their strengths and offset their weaknesses. Peter Drucker explained that the 21st century workplace requires knowledge workers, someone who has expertise above anybody else but is not the boss. The real talent in contemporary leadership is that a 21st century leader is less the expert but more the convener of experts. In Numbers chapter 20, the Israelites have just buried Miriam and are in crisis. They are thirsty and frustrated. So they go to Moses and ask for water. And then they complain to Moses that they wish he had not taken them out of Egypt, or they wish that God had killed them early in the journey. They are clearly done and fed up. They have lost faith in their leader. In response, Moses and Aaron go to God. So God tells them to take their rod and assemble the community, and then order the rock to yield water. However, Moses strikes the rock twice, producing water. As the Israelites rejoiced in the moment with water, God told Moses and Aaron that because they did not listen to him and did not speak to the rock as God had instructed, they can no longer lead the congregation into the land of Israel. In that moment, Moses practiced poor leadership. Although he may have disagreed with God's instructions, he did not share his concerns with God when they spoke in private, but instead went against the decision in public. By doing so, he disrespected God and devalued the leadership of Moses and God. In public, they should have acted as a united front, but instead Moses took matters into his own hands, which may have gotten the result the people desired, but hurt the community in the long term, since Moses was no longer able to lead them into the promised land. This pandemic was unforeseen, but the problems the Jewish community is currently facing are highlighting concerns that many Jewish leaders were already asking. What does it mean to be a Jewish community if the people are not coming to the physical space? How do we meet the people where they are? Right now, they are stuck at home. In a year from now, who knows where the people will be? It is a daunting task, but if 21st century Jewish organizations want to survive, leaders must show humility. They must diversify those around them at the table and serve as a united front when speaking to their community to ensure that there is a future Jewish community. Thank you.